Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Mia pressed a motel key into my palm and didn't blink. I kept my hand open like it might bite. I'm Erin Cole, 35, and I knew this was loaded. Use it tonight, her jaw set, then we breathe. I slipped the key away and wondered who I'd be afterward. Her phone buzzed twice and stayed face down. Anything else, I asked, because silence felt like a cliff. No rules, be discreet, don't drag me into it. She stepped back and crossed her arms like a guard. I walked out before I begged for different terms. The rideshare door shut and boxed me with my thoughts. I could still feel the key digging into skin. My chest ran fast, hard, like it wanted out. I told the driver a new address and tasted metal. Tonight would move a line I hadn't touched before. The motel clerk slid a form and didn't look up. I signed with a hand that didn't feel attached. The room swallowed me and I dropped on the edge. Her text hit like a gavel, no questions, just go. I stared until the screen dimmed and doubt grew teeth. I opened a dating app and deleted it. Reinstalled it with fingers that shook, then breathed. A match landed fast, short bio, direct message, no fluff. We traded 3 lines at a time, no names yet. I checked the door twice and hated my caution. I changed the meeting spot to a crowded bar. Noise would cover nerves and anonymity helps bad plans. She sent a thumbs up and nothing else. I washed my face in the sink and counted. 10 seconds later, I didn't feel cleaner, only set. The bar hummed like a hive and I kept moving. A woman lifted a hand from a corner stool. Are you Erin? She asked, voice steady and light. I nodded and sat, keeping space like it mattered. Her smile held and then thinned like a warning. I'm Kay, she said, and I caught my reflection. I wasn't wearing my ring, which surprised me. Trial separation, I offered, because lies breed bigger lies. Then we already understand each other, she answered, calm. I lifted my glass and felt my appetite return. Her knee touched mine once and it stayed. The room faded to guesswork and thin distance. Your place or a room? She asked with a tilt. I heard Mia's voice saying go and I rose. Kay stood too, already reaching for her coat. The ride stretched like a wire and no one talked. At her building she turned, searching my eyes. You sure? She asked, hand on the elevator button. The key in my pocket burned through fabric. Yeah, I said, already halfway through the door. Inside we kept it fast to outrun questions. Her breath caught and my balance went with it. I concentrated on touch and tried not to remember. After we lay still and stared at opposite walls. I counted the beats and waited for regret to speak. It's about your wife, she murmured, eyes closed. She gave you permission, but this still lands hard. I swallowed and nodded because that was the truth. I won't be a habit, she added with a shrug. I dressed in quiet and felt the ground tilt. Outside, air bit sharper than before and it helped. I checked my phone and saw Mia's unread message. Call me when done, 4 words that cut sideways. I put the phone away and started walking. Every step sounded like a door closing behind me. I called from the curb and she picked up on the first ring. Are you coming back or spinning out? Quick and clipped. I'm on my way, my feet already moved toward the train. Don't bring guilt as a gift, the line clicked dead. I stared at the screen and felt the night tighten. On the ride I rehearsed answers that sounded honest. Every version cracked under its own weight by station 3. I chose the shortest plan, own it fast, then breathe. The doors opened and I pushed through shoulders and elbows. I wanted a verdict, not suspense. Her door unlocked before I knocked, like she had been waiting. She let me pass and turned the chain with a snap. Shower first, she leaned on the frame and watched. Steam fogged the mirror and I steadied my hands. I wasn't clean, just cornered. I stepped out and found her at the table. No drinks between us, no patting, just air and distance. Did you follow through? She didn't soften the words. Yes, I kept it plain because embroidery would rot us. She blinked once and checked my face for wobble. Any complications? Her fingers tapped a slow count. None yet, my voice held but barely and she noticed. Then here are guardrails, she slid a folded note over. I didn't touch it, I looked at her instead. She lifted her chin like I was late to class. No overlaps, no friends, no repeats, keep it invisible. Her rhythms were drilled, careful and deliberate, not casual. You wanted space, I felt the room close one notch. I want data, she crossed one leg and waited. Data sounded colder than divorce. You told me to go, I kept my volume low. I told you to learn what you're chasing, her jaw worked. Did you find anything worth burning our home? Her eyes held. I found that I can do it and still hate it. That truth landed and rattled the table. Do you want another round with her? She didn't blink. No, the answer surprised us both and it stuck. Good, she pulled the note back and pocketed it. I felt a fragile win where a loss should be. Silence crowded in and asked for rent. Her phone lit and she tilted it away. Is that the person you're seeing? Heat climbed my neck. Focus on our lane, she stood and moved to the sink. Water ran loud and then stopped like a cut. My pulse found a drum of its own. Are we building something or arranging the exit? I pushed. That depends on how you handle the next 48. What happens in 48? My mouth dried. I meet someone for coffee, she watched my shoulders react. I steadied myself on the chair and didn't sit. Is this punishment or research? I needed a label for pain. It's control, she wiped the counter with slow circles. You still have a choice if you want one. I recognized the trap and raised both hands empty. She nodded once and the temperature dropped. Rules apply to me too, she spoke without looking up. You don't get a pass from fallout if I cross them. So we both walk near a cliff and call it growth. She gave a small laugh that wasn't happy or sad. It's a cliff either way. My phone buzzed on the counter and I froze. A new message from the woman, short and efficient, no warmth. Next time we keep it cleaner, she added a winking face. I flipped the screen down and let the shame breathe. Mia watched my wrists like I might lie. There won't be a next time, I forced the words steady. Hold that line beyond sunrise, she leaned on her heels. I'm setting an appointment with a counselor tomorrow. Book it and send me the slot, her voice softened. The softness scared me more than the hard edges. Sleep here or at that place, she pointed toward the door. Here, the choice was fast and surprisingly simple. Guest room, she tossed a blanket without aiming. I caught it and felt the weight that didn't warm. She turned off the light and left me with echoes. In the dark, my brain replayed her coffee plan. Jealousy climbed fast and stupid, loud as sirens. I counted breaths to keep from texting a demand. Control came back inch by inch like scraped skin. I decided to show up at therapy ready to bleed. Morning stretched slow and brittle and finally broke. She stood by the doorway with a packed tote. I'll be home late after work, neutral and firm. Do I call you or let you call me? Text once at noon and once at 8. Are you doing the coffee today? I already knew. It's tomorrow, she searched my face for protest and warning. I lifted both palms like a promise I could keep. Then we have one day to act like partners. Prove it, she said, and the challenge stuck. I made the appointment and sent the confirmation screenshot. She replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. I took the guest blanket to the closet and paused. Something small rattled inside the pocket before it fell. A chipped motel key landed by my shoe and waited. I dropped the motel key on the counter and waited. Mia walked in, saw it, and stopped like she hit a tripwire. Where did that come from? Her shoulders squared and held. Guest blanket pocket, I kept my palms open and steady. Then someone wanted it found, she said, eyes narrowing. Return it or trash it, I pushed it toward her halfway. She nudged it back with one finger and looked through me. Not mine, her mouth tight like a knot. Whose then? I felt my chest climb into my throat. Figure it out before noon, she said, checking the time. Cancel the coffee, I heard the plea leave before thinking. No, she tied her hair back and tied my stomach tighter. It's not a stunt, she added, voice low and controlled. I'll keep it light and short in public. Public still bleeds, I answered, and she kept moving. My phone vibrated once and flashed a new message. Unknown number, 7 digits I didn't recognize on sight. Tonight might be complicated, we should talk. I locked the screen and felt heat climb fast. Work, I lied, and the lie tasted like coins. We have therapy at 2, Mia reminded me without turning. We go and clean, she added, tapping the counter twice. No secrets on the table, or it's a wasted hour. I looked at the key and heard something grind inside. Clean as a dream, I said, but I nodded anyway. Before noon, I texted the unknown number once for confirmation. Who is this? I kept punctuation sharp to slow my hands. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Kay, need to explain something in person. My knuckles went white around the phone and held. Mia read my face, not the screen, which was worse. Is that her? Her voice carried no wobble or plea. Yes, truth landed in the room like wet concrete. What does she want? Her eyes didn't blink once. Explain. Ning, I said, and the word felt like a blade. We'll handle that after therapy, she replied, shoulders straight. You meet her with boundaries, she continued, counting with fingers. Short, safe, recorded if necessary, she stared until I answered. I'll choose a public bench and keep it visible. Good, she said, and the air thinned another notch. At 2, we sat across from the therapist and mirrors. State what you did in one sentence, the therapist asked. I had sex outside the marriage with permission, I said. Mia didn't flinch, and the room measured that silence. State what you fear most by Friday, the therapist said. Becoming strangers who still share rent, I answered without pause. Losing respect for him on purpose, Mia answered just as fast. The therapist made us swap seats and repeated again. My mouth dried as I heard my voice from her chair. The repetition made the dread heavier but clearer. Set one rule for the next week, the therapist guided. No more new partners, I said before I could hesitate. Full transparency about coffee, Mia added with a quick nod. Block anything that feels like chasing dopamine, the therapist summarized. We signed a sheet and stared at the signatures like warnings. Outside, wind cut through my shirt and grounded me hard. Mia leaned against the wall and watched my hands shake. Text her now, set time and place and duration. I typed a message and kept it clipped and practical. 6:30 minutes, park bench by the fountain, that's it. Kay replied within seconds and agreed without emoticons or warmth. Fine, the text read, then nothing else followed. Mia studied my screen for one beat and looked away. You record if anything feels off, she said, jaw locked. I'll stand down if you ask, I promised and meant it. We walked home in parallel lines that refused to meet. At the door, she placed the key in a plain envelope. Seal it, she instructed, and I pressed the flap firm. We deliver it to the desk after your meeting, she continued. Her certainty calmed me and also hurt me. At 5:40 I left early and didn't look back. The park felt open and dangerous in a simple way. Kay was already seated with hands tucked under thighs. You came, she said, voice quiet but clear enough. I have 30 minutes, I answered, checking my watch once. I'm late and probably wrong and maybe in trouble. She slid a small packet across with trembling fingers. I think I'm pregnant, she whispered, barely moving her mouth. The ground shifted under my shoes without warning or grace. Are you sure, I asked, because questions were all I had. Early test, faint lines, I need a second test. I'll help, I said, and the commitment stunned us both. I don't want chaos, she added, eyes flicking to my pockets. I want clarity and a plan and no drama. Behind her, the fountain kept pounding like a countdown. Not here, I said, scanning the faces drifting past us. Clinic tomorrow, I'll cover cost and ride in anything. Kay exhaled and nodded like she had been bracing. I'll text details tonight after I confirm a slot. I felt time compress around every word we exchanged. My phone buzzed again and I didn't need to check. Mia knew where I was and when I'd return. Are we done? Kay asked, already half rising to leave. Yes, I answered, and the yes cut something loose. We split in opposite directions without a backward glance. I walked to the motel desk with the envelope. Mia was waiting at the corner across the street. I placed the envelope on the counter and stepped back. The clerk nodded and slid it into a drawer without comment. I turned and met Mia under the awning with shaking legs. Well, she asked, and I measured how much to share. Possible pregnancy, clinic tomorrow, I'm paying, I reported flat. Her hand lifted, then dropped like it hit an invisible fence. We pause your honesty streak until tests confirm, she whispered. Then we decide who we are in real time. We moved toward the crosswalk as the signal blinked. My phone lit again with a clinic address and early hour. Mia saw the screen and did not look away. Go do it right, no secrets after tomorrow. I nodded and felt the night narrow to a blade. I arrived early and watched the clinic doors slide open. Kay waved from a bench, jaw set, hands still. We go in together, I said, and she nodded once. A receptionist pointed us to a row of chairs. The clock above us ticked like it wanted answers. Kay kept her gaze forward and breath through her nose. I booked a confirmation test, she murmured, voice controlled. You cover costs, then we keep distance, her foot bounced. I'm here and I'll handle money, I answered. Her heel stopped but the space between us tightened. The nurse called her name and gestured down the hall. I'll text if they separate us, she said without looking. I stood and nearly followed, then thought better. She disappeared around a corner with a stiff spine. I sat back down and felt my phone vibrate. Mia's message blinked on the screen like a check. Update when there is real news, no play-by-play. I typed a single word, waiting, then deleted it. Understood, will message after results. I pressed send. I pictured her at a table counting my choices. A man across from me laughed at something private. His laughter broke the room's careful silence and lingered. I tightened my grip on the chair until it creaked. My thoughts outran me and crashed into what-ifs. Fear sharpened into a plan I couldn't name yet. Kay returned with a paper band on her wrist. Blood draw next, then another sample, she said briskly. They want timing details I don't want to discuss here. We can step outside after, I offered, voice low. She shook her head and stared at the floor. A door opened and her name came again, precise and calm. She stood, then paused with a half-turn toward me. If this is real, I don't want your marriage, she said. I want responsibility and clear lanes only, she continued. I nodded and she moved without waiting for comfort. Waiting room air grew heavy and oddly sweet. Mother shushed a toddler and checked the door twice. I counted to 60 and lost count around 40. Control felt possible for a second, then slid away. I imagined Mia reading a calendar and drawing boundaries. Kate came back with cotton on her arm and a wince. They'll take a look at the numbers by noon. Noon makes this day very long, I muttered, then stopped. Her eyes flicked up, wary but not hostile. We can sit outside until they call, she offered. On the curb, she pulled a folded receipt from her pocket. This is the test from last night, she said quickly. Lines were faint, but they were there, she added. I saw the faint bars and felt heat in my cheeks. Evidence changed everything and nothing at once. Timing matters, she said, watching my reaction sharply. I can narrow it, but I won't do guesses. I need certainty before I speak to anyone else. You'll have my support either way, I replied slowly. She studied my face like she expected me to run. The clinic number flashed on her phone and cut the pause. She answered and listened while her mouth went tight. Results after a second review, we need one more check. She ended the call and let out a controlled breath. They want another sample in 20 minutes, she said flatly. We re-entered the hallway and found the same chairs. Her leg pressed against mine once and then withdrew. Do you regret meeting me at all, she asked. I regret what it did to my home, I answered. I don't regret being honest here, I added and waited. Another nurse stepped out and motioned only at Kay. Text me if they delay again, I said, standing halfway. She gave a tight nod and vanished through the door. I leaned against the wall and watched my reflection blink. I hated how familiar this building was becoming. Noon hit like a slow hammer across the room. Kay returned with a sealed envelope and unreadable eyes. They want us in a private booth for the call. We followed a tech to a small partition space. I sat across from her and flattened my hands. The physician's voice came through, compressed but steady. Serum is borderline, the voice reported, clean and clinical. Retest in 48 hours to confirm direction, it continued. Kay's lips parted and the room seemed to tilt. Borderline means unknown, I said, forcing my jaw calm. They released us with instructions that felt both strict and vague. Kay folded the paper and tucked it away without a glance. I need distance until we know, she said, shoulders rigid. You wire the clinic directly, not me, she added. Done, I answered, already composing the transfer in my head. Outside, traffic chopped the moment into smaller pieces. I drafted a message to Mia and rewrote it once. Borderline, another test in 2 days, I covered today. She replied fast with 3 lines and nothing extra. Copy, no more meetings with Kay unless medical, it read. Kay rubbed her temple and looked past me toward nowhere. I don't want your address, I don't want your calendar. I want the truth when numbers arrive, she finished. You'll get it within an hour of hearing it, I promised. She nodded once and stepped back like a final signal. We split at the corner, each choosing a different light. I felt the day hitch and then jerk forward. The envelope in her bag made a sound in my head. I messaged the clinic and paid the balance with a code. A receipt pinged my phone and the wait held. By the time I reached the apartment, my pulse had steadied. Mia stood in the doorway, arms crossed but face neutral. Status, she asked, keeping distance but giving room. Borderline, another test in 48, I answered. She exhaled slowly and stared at my shoes. 2 days, she murmured, then tapped the door. Twice. During that window, you keep a clean slate, she continued. No contact unless it's medical or money, her chin lifted. Yes, I said, and meant it without reservation. This house needs air, she added and turned away. I followed her to the kitchen and stayed on my side. We eat, we talk logistics, nothing sentimental today. Therapy tomorrow morning instead of afternoon, she adjusted. Good, I replied, grateful for structure more than comfort. She reached for her phone and paused like a warning. I canceled the coffee, she said, voice even and cool. I'm not playing mirror games during a storm, she continued. Relief showed up and I shoved it down quickly. Thank you, I said, and she watched my throat move. We aren't safe, don't mistake relief for progress. I washed my hands and dried them on my shirt. Tell me your plan for the next 48. Work, sleep in the guest room, no alcohol, I listed. Give me your phone at 9 each night, she added. That last line flashed like a flare across the room. I placed my phone on the counter at 9 exactly. She scrolled once and set it face down without comment. I'm not policing, I'm measuring, she said quietly. I nodded and felt the trust meter flicker and twitch. We stood there until the clock told us to move. In bed, I stared at the ceiling and counted slow. Borderline lived in my chest like a stuck gear. I pictured a tiny digital readout tilting either way. If it climbed, life detonated one room at a time. If it dropped, we still had rubble to sort. The alarm cut through the hallway, and I was already upright. Mia blocked the bathroom door with one hand raised. Today we go early and we go honest. I'm ready, I answered, and I was not sure. She lowered her hand and walked past without looking back. Therapy started with a timer on the table. 60 seconds each, pure truth, no defense. Mia went first and kept her stare on me. I don't trust promises made under pressure, she said. The timer beeped and the room held its breath. My minutes scraped out like gravel under boots. I want this marriage more than a clean reputation. I also want control over impulses I let loose. I heard my voice steady near the end. The therapist flipped the timer again and nodded once. Today you both share phones at lunch and 9. Today you both state any urges in real time. Today you both log contact with third parties. The list landed between us like an order of operations. We agreed with short words that smelled like work. Leaving the office, Mia matched my pace with purpose. Lunch check at 12 sharp, she said without breaking stride. Share calendar, share calls, share messages with names. Then we breathed for 1 hour without debate. I nodded, and the plan gave me something heavy to hold. At work, my screen glared like a witness. A text from the lab arrived at 10:15. Schedule confirmation for Wednesday morning, clean, exact, brutal. I forwarded it to Mia and waited for response. She replied with a thumbs up and a period. Hayes number flared next with 2 sentences that stung. Spotting started, doctor says still come for draw. My chest tightened and my thumbs hovered without moving. I typed one line with careful spacing and sent it. I will cover costs and wait outside unless needed. Noon hit and Mia called on the dot. Open the sharing screen now, her tone made it simple. I streamed my log and scrolled slow while she watched. Good, nothing extra, keep it boring until 9. Her exhale came fast and then cut short. Someone just messaged me from a blocked profile. My stomach clenched like a fist inside ribs. What did they want? I asked, bracing for impact. A coffee rain check and a winking face, she answered. I felt jealousy surge, hot and careless, then fade. Do you want to meet him anyway? I asked. No, I already canceled and I am not reconsidering. Still, it messes with my head, she admitted quietly. Block him fully, I said, surprising myself with calm. Done, she answered, and something fragile found footing. At 3, the lab called Kay and looped me in. Numbers pending, come back if bleeding intensifies. Watch for dizziness and severe pain, measured, impersonal. I wrote the instructions down with times and thresholds. Information steadied me and also pinned me to the chair. 5 o'clock crowded the apartment with unfinished sentences. Mia stood at the counter and held my gaze. When this resolves, we decide whether we pause everything. Not just other people, we might pause us. I gripped the edge and felt the warning slide under skin. Tonight we do a drill, she continued with a firm cadence. You tell me the worst thought you had today. You get 60 seconds and I don't interrupt. I breathed once and committed before I could retreat. The worst was wanting to run to a hotel. I watched her eyes harden and then soften. You didn't run, she answered after a tight beat. No, I said, and the word landed heavy between us. Your turn, I added, opening the same trap. She lifted her chin and stepped into it. I wanted you to fail the phone check. I wanted proof that matched my anger. She looked at the floor and blinked once. I did not get that proof and I am unsettled. The admission hollowed out something and made space. My phone buzzed on the counter with a new alert. Hey again, short message, only a timestamp and a request. Can you send the transfer now before pharmacy closes? Mia's eyes flicked to the screen and then to me. Do it while I watch, she said, steady as a judge. I opened the banking app and queued the payment. Clinician account only, Mia reminded, arms folded and still. Memo includes appointment ID and nothing else. I entered the digits and read them aloud. She leaned in and confirmed before I hit send. Hay responded with a single check mark in silence. I did not reply because nothing helpful remained. Mia tapped the counter twice and broke the pause. 9 will be ugly if you slip before then. It won't happen, I said and meant it down to bone. Dinner was tactical and quiet and not unkind. We mapped the next day by hours and tasks. Gym at 7 for both, she proposed, eyes unwavering. Hard workout, then shower, then work, then therapist. I agreed, grateful for structure that punished and protected. At 8:30, I went for a walk around the block. I called an old friend and kept it surface level. How are you? He asked, voice full of normal. Busy week, I answered because truth would burn him. We hung up after 3 minutes and nothing shifted. 9 came fast and hit like a checkpoint. I placed my phone on the table and backed away. Mia swiped through notifications with minimal expression. Nothing to report, she said, returning it face down. Relief flickered and died because the night was long. I tried to read and failed to absorb a line. My brain replayed the lab schedule like a chant. Wednesday would show a number that tilted fate. I pictured the moment we would answer for everything. I pictured the moment I would break if it went wrong. Near midnight, Kay texted again with 2 words. Cramps worse, I stared at the message and froze. I walked to the bedroom door and knocked once. Mia opened before my knuckles landed the second time. She needs urgent help, I said, holding up the screen. Mia studied the text and then my face. You take her to urgent care and stay outside. You message me on arrival and again at discharge. You call if the staff needs signatures. I swallowed and drove without music or comfort. The waiting room hummed with tired bodies and bad news. Kay hunched over the armrest and waved me closer. They'll take me in 10 minutes, she whispered through gritted teeth. Can you hold my bag while I check in? I took it and backed up 2 steps like a guard. Nurses let her th. Rough double doors in the room resettled. I paced once and stood and sat again. Text to Mia, here now, she is inside with staff. Her reply arrived within seconds like a metronome. Stay visible, do not vanish, I'm awake. An hour crept by with stutters and false starts. A monitor chimed behind the wall and then stilled. My mind filled the gaps with every possible disaster. I gripped the chair so I wouldn't grab the door. When it swung finally, I jumped like a rookie. Kay returned with a discharge sheet and shell-shocked eyes. Probable miscarriage, follow-up tomorrow, more blood work. Her mouth trembled and then locked into place. I offered water and she took it without tasting. Her hands shook as she folded the document twice. Do you want a ride home or a hotel? I asked. Home, she answered, straightforward but frayed at the edges. Okay, I guided her to the curb and called a car. We rode in quiet while she watched the passing city. Halfway there she spoke without using my name. I don't want this to ruin your whole life. That choice isn't available anymore, I answered, slow and clear. But I will carry my part of this weight. She nodded once and looked out the window again. I saw my reflection and barely recognized the posture. We stopped outside her building and stayed a second. Text me the follow-up time when you have it. I'll wire any additional fees before you arrive. She squeezed my wrist and released it fast. Thank you for coming, she said, voice rough but steady. Driving back, I rehearsed what to say at home. No spin, no staging, just medical facts and nothing extra. My hands trembled when I reached the door. Mia opened before I found the key in my pocket. She stepped aside and let me pass with a silent nod. Status, 1 word, firm, precise. Likely miscarriage, follow-up tomorrow for confirmation. Mia's jaw flexed and then relaxed by fractions. You did what you said you would do, she murmured. I leaned on the counter and waited for the next blow. Here is mine, she continued after a long beat. I took a test tonight because my cycle is late. I stared at her and felt the floor shift again. It was negative, she added, eyes on my mouth. Relief crashed through me and left me unsteady. I didn't tell you before I took it. That was wrong and it came from fear. She touched the edge of the table and steadied herself. I'm telling you now because we agreed on no secrets. The air thinned and then cleared like a window wiped clean. We stood there with two different verdicts and one shared ache. I will go with Kay to the follow-up if needed. You do not need to come in the room, she said. I know, I answered, and my voice didn't shake. We held eye contact until sleep finally came for us. Morning arrived mean and early and unforgiving. We hit the gym like we promised, hard and focused. Sweat burned and made thinking impossible for stretches. When it ended, I felt something close to human again. Mia handed me a towel like an agreement signed. On the way out, my phone buzzed twice in my pocket. Hey, appointment at 9, please meet outside again. I glanced at Mia and lifted the screen for her. Go, same rules, text on entry and exit. I nodded and headed for the door with sprinting thoughts. The clinic lot was crowded and restless at 8:50. Kay arrived walking slower but standing straighter. Ready? She asked, eyes measuring my posture. Ready, I answered, and we went inside together. Staff took her back quickly and left me with clock hands. 9:30 came with a nurse waving me over. Patient requests your presence for signature only. I signed a consent and stepped away immediately. Kay gave a tight smile and disappeared behind the curtain. I retreated to the chairs and reopened the messaging thread. Mia texted a simple question, holding up. Yes, waiting for results, I wrote and meant it. Remember the promise after this, she replied after a pause. Full stop on outside contact for 1 month. I tapped my chest once and typed my agreement. 10:15, the doctor stepped out and looked for Kay. He spoke quietly to her while I stared at the floor. She approached with eyes that told the story before words. It's over, she said, tired but composed enough. They want one more draw in a week to confirm. The words landed and echoed all at once. I reached out and she let me touch her shoulder. I'll handle the last bill and disappear, I offered. Please don't call disappearing noble, she answered with a sigh. Just call it necessary and let it be. We walked out together and stopped on the sidewalk. Take care of your marriage, she said with a small nod. Take care of yourself, I returned because there was nothing better. She crossed the street and folded into the crowd. I watched until there was no one to wave at. I messaged Mia in 3 lines and waited. Over, final check next. T-week, but they are certain. Coming home now, I stared at the typing dots. Come home, she wrote, then nothing else. I tucked the phone away and started walking faster. When I reached the door, Mia opened it immediately. We didn't speak for a long count of heartbeats. She stepped closer and placed my hand on her chest. Can we try the month? She asked without blinking. Yes, I answered, and the word felt like ground underfoot. We start with a choice tonight, she continued quietly. We box up anything that ties us to that motel. I pictured the envelope drawer and the memory it held. We already returned the key, I said, almost defensive. We still have the story stuck to the walls. We gathered what little remained and sealed it shut. She set the box outside by the trash and breathed. I realized the house sounded different in that moment. Maybe it was only us listening harder than before. Either way, the silence finally stopped feeling like a threat. My phone vibrated on the counter, and I answered on instinct. A nurse confirmed identity and then read the numbers. Declining as expected, no pregnancy, the voice finished cleanly. I thanked her twice and pressed my fist to my sternum. Mia watched my face and didn't blink once. This ends that branch, I said, voice steady enough. She exhaled through her nose and leaned against the table. What now? She asked, not moving her feet. Now we keep the month we promised, I replied. Her jaw eased, but the room held its charge. We walked to the living room like it was neutral ground. Delete contact after the last invoice clears, she said. I already sent the final transfer, I answered. She extended a hand and I placed my phone there. She scrolled, then set it down without ceremony. I will message her goodbye right now, I added. Short and factual, she reminded, folding her arms. I typed 4 words and a period and hit send. Wishing you health ahead, that was all I allowed. Mia watched my thumbs and then raised her chin. Your turn, I said, gesturing to her screen. She opened her messages and blocked the lingering number. Done, one syllable, crisp and final. The quiet that followed felt earned rather than forced. I realized I could breathe without counting first. We met the therapist at noon with our phones off. Say the choice you already made today, the therapist prompted. We closed all side doors, I told the floor. We chose discomfort together over thrills alone. Mia's shoulders lowered by a fraction that felt large. Work the repair or plan the exit came next. Pick one for the next 30 days only. Repair, we answered together, surprised to match. Good, the therapist said, sliding a notepad across. Make 5 daily actions that prove it. We wrote in silence and compared lists without defensiveness. Mine included workouts, shared meals, and nightly check-ins. Hers added joint walks, therapy homework, and phone windows. We circled overlaps and crossed out anything performative. The set looked small and heavy and possible. Back home, she pointed to the couch like a witness stand. Inventory of lies, she said, palms open and trembling. Everything you hid today or considered hiding. I swallowed and told her about impulses and flashes. She rolled a pen between fingers while I kept going. Your turn, I said, bracing for my own heat. She admitted she had drafted a message to the old date. She deleted it before sending, but she almost hit send. I felt anger spark and then flicker out. Not relief, but recognition that matched mine. We cooked something simple and worked in rhythm. No apologies mid-chop, no analysis mid-bite. Halfway through, she looked up and held my eyes. Do you still want me? She asked, voice near invisible. Yes, I said, and the word sounded earned. Then touch me without selling a future, she added. I reached for her and kept it slow and honest. We moved like people who knew the price now. No fireworks, no grand speeches, just presence and attention. When we stopped, nothing felt solved, but something held. Later, I took the trash out and saw the box. The one with our motel story taped shut outside. I lifted it and felt the weight surprise me. She opened the door a crack and watched me decide. I carried it to the curb and kept walking. At the corner, I paused and thought about returning it. Not to keep the past, but to inspect the damage. Instead, I left it there and sent a photo. She replied with a single dot that meant continue. I turned and headed home with empty hands. We reviewed calendars and carved out clean time. No late nights alone, no secret errands. If a craving hit, we texted a single symbol. A dash meant urge, 3 dots meant I need help. We agreed to treat those signals like fire alarms. The first test came before sunset like a drill. My phone buzzed with an unknown follow request. I typed a dash and set the phone face down. Mia walked in and stood beside me without questions. We waited 60 seconds and the pole lost teeth. After dinner, we walked the block that used to haunt us. Every corner was a scene I wanted to rewrite. Tell me one thing you learned the hard way, she said. Permission doesn't erase consequence, I answered immediately. She nodded once and kicked a pebble into the gutter. Your turn, I said, giving the street our attention. Control feels safe until it becomes a weapon, she offered. We reached the stairs and stopped under the overhang. Her hand found mine and didn't flinch. The month ahead no longer looked like a sentence. At 9, we placed both phones on the table. I opened mine and deleted the thread with K. Not because I hated her, but because I chose us. Mia did the same with her almost date history. 2 quiet erasures that felt loud in the chest. Tomorrow we meet your parents for dinner, she said. The word parents snapped a line in my mind. We keep details minimal and consistent, I proposed carefully. Trial separation became structured work, she summarized. Questions get short answers and clean edges. Do you want to wear your ring? She asked. I stared at my hand and waited for an impulse. I'll wear it after the month if we earn it. She breathed out and slid hers onto a chain instead. A compromise that looked temporary and honest. We slept in the same room for the first time since the key. I listened to her breathing shift from guarded to steady. Around midnight I woke and felt panic try to climb. I typed 3 dots and set the phone down again. She rolled toward me and touched my wrist without speaking. In the morning, the gym felt like a courtroom again. We moved through sets without chasing personal records. Effort over ego, form over speed. On the way out, she bumped my shoulder once. A small contact that felt like a verdict. At work, I got a final invoice from the lab. I paid it and requested confirmation for my records. A message popped up from Kay before the receipt. "Thank you, I'm stepping back now," it read. I replied with one word, received, and archived the thread. Lunch check happened in a crowded cafe near the office. Mia sat across from me and reviewed the morning log. "Nothing hidden," she said, tapping the screen twice. "Keep it that way after dinner with family." I saluted with my straw and earned a half smile. Dinner started tense and polite and then softened. Her dad studied my face like he owned a metric. "You two doing all right?" he asked, voice even. "We hired help and we are doing the work," I said. He grunted once and passed the salt like a baton. Back home, doors closed and we faced the late hour. "Do you believe this lasts?" she asked from the hallway. "I don't know the future," I answered with care. "I know I'm choosing you today and tomorrow morning." She stepped closer and searched my face for wobble. "Then choose again right now," she murmured near my ear. I did, without speeches or bargains or discounts. She pulled me in and I felt something unclench. Not forgiveness, not yet, something like forward motion. We held on until the room stopped spinning. Days stacked, alarms, logs, shared chores. Cravings came and went and left smaller footprints. At 2 weeks we sat with the therapist again. "Tell me one way you surprised yourself," the therapist asked. I told the truth before being asked to, I said. Mia took a breath and gave hers without trembling. "I let him touch me without checking his phone," she said. We left that session holding hands like a deliberate act. On the sidewalk she squeezed once and looked at me. "Do you want the ring now?" she asked gently. "After the month," I answered, staying with the plan. "Then let's mark this another way," she replied. She opened the hall closet and pulled out a small jar. Inside were scraps with tiny promises we had written. We burned the ones we had broken and kept the rest. Night fell and the apartment stayed quiet and alive. We set the jar on the top shelf and stepped back. No speeches, no vows, just the sight of it waiting. She leaned into my side and I let myself relax. The month still stretched ahead, but it felt hours now. On the 30th day, we stood where the key story started. No props, no envelopes, just two people and a decision. She placed her ring in my open hand and held my gaze. "Is it time?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "It's time," I answered and slid it on.